Okay. Man, well, I just got halfway through my video and realized it wasn't recording. So, good morning. So I have a hypothetical for you to think about, and but I'll give you some background first. So a few days ago I was watching a video by a British doctor, YouTuber. Excellent. I mean, I think we'll try to remember to leave a link to his video in the description. But yeah, excellent doctor, very data driven. Just everything he talks about is all kind of published, kind of officially published stuff. And he kind of looks into that and thinks about what are the ramifications of this, or what does this mean. But yeah, very solid, very sound kind of guy. Anyway, so he was talking about excess deaths observed in England and Wales. And so by excess deaths, what that means is, we have numbers of people dying every year, and so you have like kind of year-to-year averages. So you have, and they don't change a lot. Year to year, you get increases due to population. Something like the pandemic, obviously that kind of changed numbers. But as far as other things, it's sort of with a large population, it's fairly consistent. And what they're finding, England and Wales, is after they subtract out COVID-related deaths, so people dying of or with COVID, what they're seeing is about 1,300 people a week more than expected are dying, which if I remember correctly, that's kind of like a 16% increase in the death rate, which is like, when you think about it, that's like freaking massive. And so 1,300 a week, that's like something like 60,000 a year, ballpark. And I think, I don't really know the population of England and Wales, but I would ballpark, if you translated that, that ratio to the US, I would call it a 10x multiplier. That's like, well, thereabouts, call it 500,000 extra deaths a year. That's like serious, that is serious numbers. And he said at this point they don't really know what's going on. But he was saying, and I think other people in the medical community are saying, that really warrants some serious investigation, because that's a really big number of people. And and he didn't have like hard numbers for anywhere else, but he's based in Great Britain. But he said that countries around the world are all experiencing a similar kind of upticks in the death rate. So they're experiencing a similar excess death increase. So added to that, there was there's a thing called SADS. Now, you may have heard of SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. So oddly enough, the first place I heard of this was actually an article that turned out to be from Australia. So it was that they dubbed it SADS, sudden adult death syndrome. And so what this is kind of younger people, younger adults. So people without an obvious risk factor. So in the 20 to 50, I guess, age range, something like that. Anyway, just dying suddenly without any obvious risk factor. Because some people, when they die, it's like, I hate to say it, it's not that surprising. They have a lifestyle or other stuff going on in their body that it's like, okay, it's sad, but it's not surprising. Whereas it seems like this SADS thing, it's like, there's people dying who thought, hang on, what? He died, she died, what? That makes no sense at all. It's totally unexpected. So that's becoming a thing. And again, that is something that is, appears to be a more or less worldwide phenomenon. And so it, really bears some, serious investigation, serious sort of money and effort to put behind that. And so as far as the excess deaths in England and Wales, he sort of, people have been sort of speculating about what it may be. So things like, possibly long COVID. So, good morning. So, people who had COVID, has that elevated their risk factor? People are dying from, some latent complication or something that's introduced into their system. Also things like stress and depression, that impact of the psychological impact of lockdown. Because again, we've been through the COVID pandemic, so there's a whole lot of factors that arise out of that. With stress from socioeconomic changes. There's as we're coming out of the pandemic, there's all sorts of stuff going on. In the job market, we got inflation, the war in the Ukraine, and so there's definitely a whole lot of factors that people are going, could it be this, could it be that? And of course, one of the other factors is that large, depending on what country you're in, large percentage of the population has had the COVID vaccine, or multiple, and for which kind of by definition there is no long-term study on, because they only just invented it. So he was saying this, all these factors really merit some serious investigation. And in a sort of in a follow-up video, he briefly mentioned that a lot of people had said, well, what are the numbers, amongst of excess deaths? Can you compare the rate of excess deaths amongst the vaccinated and unvaccinated populations? Because you think that's data that they have. They know, certainly I think in somewhere like Britain, they know who got what and how many times. And he said, that's obviously that would be a, really, really key piece of data to get. But definitely, said that, well, that's an interesting omission, that those numbers have not been published anywhere. So, and here's the only thing, if you want to go conspiracy, here's the only thing that I'll say that I think would warrant that. A few months ago, read an article about stats from the U.S. military. Morning. And because they do all their own medicine, so people in the military, it's like we know what they had when they had it, and what the health rate is. But again, there was read something saying that someone had just noticed a significant uptick in unexpected deaths, stuff that would probably be now classed as SADS, amongst the US military after vaccination started. So again, that's like and then that all kind of got shut down. I guess whoever was, had been tinkering through the database was all locked out, and anyway, but it was just a blip. So who knows? That may just be some wackadoodle, could be bad stats, but who knows? But that was something I read again a few months ago now, and then all went quiet. So back to non-conspiracy stuff. Just to kind of, so that's all hard data basically, all that intro. This is real, not disputed. So hopefully the overlords at Alphabet won't be, won't shut me down. So now my hypothetical is, and again, I'm not a medical person, I don't have the data, but so the hypothetical is, imagine if it turned out that all these excess deaths were connected to the vaccine. Just imagine. I'm not saying they are. Hypothetical. Just imagine if they were. What would be the fallout from that? And where would that backlash fall? Think about that. Obviously the drug companies, although they were, because this was being kind of rushed out and testing was vastly reduced, they were granted immunity certainly by our government for anything that goes wrong. But definitely there'd be an outcry against them. I think all the government sort of bodies that either pushed or in some cases enforced vaccination, obviously there'd be huge backlash against them. I think politicians in general who were kind of pushing or fighting for mandates of the vaccine, there'd be huge outcry against them. And similarly the media, media figures who were pushing it and shaming anyone that was not interested in being vaccinated, who wanted to take their chances. I'm one of them. So there would be again, backlash against them. Companies that enforced vaccinations on their employees. Hey there. And not a bunch of them personally. People, employees who were, they were pretty much given the choice of get the jab or get fired. So there would be a huge, say your spouse had it, in their job were told, well, get the jab or you lose your job. They get the jab. They then died, and you now find out that was a side effect of the vaccine. Well, what would be your reaction to that employer? Like, okay, sue for wrongful death. You forced my spouse to take actions that led to their death. So it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much to picture like just a total chaotic mess if that were to be the case. Again, I'm not saying it is, but if that were to be the case. So now we, you've thought about where would the backlash fall. Now think about, well, again, this is not a conspiracy, but obviously all those people would have a vested interest in that information not coming out if it were true, or even just not looking into, not looking in the box, not even asking that question. I mean, I think you'd agree. Now, again, whether that's the case or not, you could, it's not a conspiracy to say, yeah, all those people would have very much a vested interest in it not, it not coming out if it were the case. And so then there are all the people who are in control of that information, from the drug companies to the politicians to the government bodies to the media. They're all the people that determine whether or not that question is asked, let alone answered. So I don't know, I find that troubling. I mean, it doesn't mean it if it's true that it won't come out, but it definitely leaves some room for doubt. Anyway, that's I think that's it from me. Thanks for listening. Like, share and subscribe. Have an awesome day, and we'll see you in the next one.